Mother's birthday is December the 29th, and I can't go see her, but I wrote this to her. If you were still here this year, I'd show up for more visits. I can't replace the opportunities I had but didn't take. And if for some reason I couldn't help it and wasn't able to visit, I'd still pick up the phone and call. If you were still here this year, I'd keep a closer check on your well-being and make sure that you are healthy and have no needs that you can't meet. If you were still here this year, I'd spend less time thinking that you should mind your own business and try understanding that you would have if you hadn't began to care. I'd be more sensitive to the fact that you are growing older and regretting mistakes that you made with me as well as your own mother, and I'd realize that someday I'd be wearing your very shoes and wishing that together we could have burned them before my own children have to put them on. If you were still here this year, I'd take the time to listen to your beliefs so that I could understand your spirit, and in turn, I would teach you the things that I now know since I've begun my spiritual growth, and I would offer more pardons and have more mercy. If you were still here this year, I'd spend more time getting to know who you turned out to be instead of watching constant memories of the ways that we used to be. I'd spend more time trying to see who you've become and accepting that you've changed and loving you for who you are now. If you were still here this year, I'd be more understanding. I would take into consideration the life that you yourself had to live so that I'd be better able to forgive you for the things that I lived with. I would ask you who it was that caused you fear and trembling as a child, and I would know and share your grief and have empathy as you remembered the faces that laughed at you and kept you in fear for their own entertainment. I would ask you for specifics of what they did so that you could talk about them and rise above it, and in turn maybe I could heal and overcome my own fears. If you were still here this year, I would no longer let you sit around and punish yourself and have you thinking that I may not know that you ever felt love for me. I would reassure you that I know you loved me the best way that you knew how to, and I would make sure that you know that I love you too in the best way that I know how. If you were still here this year, I'd tell you that I'm sorry for not allowing you to know my children in the ways that grandparents should. I'd stop worrying that you'd cross those lines, and I'd trust that you would respect my boundaries and not cause them any mental harm. And I'd try even harder to believe that you'd learned and wouldn't try to turn them against me. I'd have brought them to your house for holidays instead of taking mine out of turn and expecting you to be the one to make the drive. We had holidays at your mother's. We should have had them at yours, and I then could have had my time. I didn't realize the joy that I was taking from you of knowing that your children and grandchildren were coming, and that you would have the honor and privilege of preparing a feast for those that you love until it was taken from me. I'm sorry, I didn't realize the importance it is to a mother and grandmother until I had my own. If you were still here this year, I'd invite you to go more places with me. I wouldn't leave you out of so much of my life only for you to find out on a public website that you didn't get included. I'm sorry I broke your heart. It wasn't until after you had gone until I realized that you had been missing. And it wasn't even that you would have gone with us. It's just that I didn't offer. If you were still here this year, I'd be more supportive of your hopes and dreams instead of worrying about why you didn't show up for mine. If you were still here this year, I'd be less angry about how I was raised and more grateful for who it made me become. If you were still here this year, I'd hold your hand and kiss your face and I would hug you until you could feel my love. If you were still here this year, I'd put more effort into learning the spiritual things you tried to teach me and take into consideration the fact that you wouldn't have tried if you didn't care about my soul. And it would have been good for both you and I to listen closer to grandmother, considering it's a fact that more knowledge is revealed with each generation, but it does no good to know what you know without the wisdom of those who've gone on before. If you were still here this year, I'd give you more of my life, and not a day would go by that you couldn't feel my love in your heart. You're not here this year, and I have to live with that.